Hello there, this is Dana or Carrie. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm going to be talking about the narcissist who has not only triangulated your relationships with other people, but that has also been involved with parental alienation with your other parent. And there's a lot of brainwashing that goes on. There's so much involved. So today we're going to talk about triangulation, what it is. We're going to talk about parental alienation and define what that is. We're going to give the signs of potential common traits and things that happen behind closed doors with parental alienation. And I will be sharing my own personal story. So thank you so much for joining me. Now, many survivors who have experienced and suffered narcissistic abuse are aware of triangulation of relationships. So many times, you have experienced how the narcissist triangulated your relationship with your friends, with your other family members. It could be with your spouse. It could be with your friends, your coworkers, and even strangers. They try to destroy your close bonds and healthy relationships. And they use a lot of brainwashing, a lot of gaslighting, a lot of covert, underhanded schemes to discredit you, undermine you, and to destroy your reputation with these people. And so what you may not be aware of is that oftentimes when you're dealing with a narcissistic parent, grandparent, siblings, etc., there could be also really unhealthy dynamics that go on. Probably the most painful one is parental alienation. So I'll get into what that is all about. So if we look at parental alienation, according to psychology.com, they say parental alienation syndrome is a term coined in the 1980s by a child psychiatrist, Dr. Richard A. Gardner. And he says it occurs when one parent attempts to turn the couple's children against the other parent. A parent who is angry at the spouse or ex-partner accomplishes this estrangement by painting a negative picture of the other parent, having hostile comments about the other parent, blame shifting the other parent, and having false allegations about this targeted parent. They may hoard the kids, doing all they can to thwart the other parent from spending time with them. Now, if you want to understand triangulation of relationships, we're going to take a good look at what Psych Central shares on their website. So according to Psych Central, they share, quote unquote, triangulation is when a toxic or manipulative person, and it's often a person with a strong narcissistic traits, brings a third person into the relationship in order to remain in control. Okay, so the narcissist is on a power trip. They are egotistical, oppositional, delusional people. And what will happen is they'll bring a third person into the relationship in order to remain in control of both of these people. So there's three people involved: you, the narcissist, and another person. The other person could be anyone on earth. It could be your mother, your brother, your sister, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, friends, coworkers, strangers, and on it goes. There will be limited or no communication between the two triangulated individuals except through the manipulator, who is the malignant narcissist. It may appear in different forms, but all are about dividing and conquering and playing people against each other. Typically, the malignant narcissist will recruit flying monkeys, aka your toxic siblings, and so many other people who are very, very unhealthy, to join them in their covert schemes to triangulate your relationships with other people. They will triangulate everyone you can imagine. And whether it's in real life, face-to-face relationships, or even online relationships. So this is very common, especially on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and so many other forms of social media where there's a lot of retaliation, a lot of smear campaigns, and crazy making. And so we can understand that in simpler terms. Parental alienation is a form of psychological abuse, which occurs when one parent removes the other parent from the child or the adult's life by way of brainwashing, gaslighting, and convincing this child, and at this point it could even be the adult child, to reject the other parent. In most cases, especially with narcissistic abuse, a previously healthy and loving relationship between the child and the other parent is destroyed. This leads to severe emotional damage and psychological trauma by the child, who now might be a grown adult. So who does the parental alienation? So let's talk about, who is the person who's alienating your relationship with your other parent? Well, it's most common that it's with a narcissistic parent or those who have a borderline personality disorder. Due to how toxic and psychologically unstable they are, these types of people, they have no guilt, they have no shame, and they have no remorse for intentionally alienating their children from the targeted parent. So again, it's a super unhealthy dynamic, so painful. And so I'll share a little bit about my story for those who are unaware. I grew up in a single family home. So my parents divorced when I was only 2 years old. I really didn't know my dad well. I mean, how much can you know your parent when you're only 2 years old? I have absolutely no memory of my parents being married and living together. So all of my memories are with them apart, divorced, and living separate lives. So shortly after my parents divorced, my mother insisted that myself and her and my siblings relocated to another state. So we moved far away from my dad. It was a long distance. And what happened is it actually created more harm for me because, one, this really did alienate me from my father. I lived very far away from him, could not see him. And I had a painful father wound. When I grew up as an adult woman and 2020, I discovered what parental alienation is and was pretty blown away and speechless that I didn't know prior to this timeline that my mother alienated me from my father. Well, now all the pieces are fitting together of this puzzle. I've put the puzzle together. I clearly understand what happened. I started doing research. I educated myself about, narcissistic abuse and parental alienation. And whoa, it's pretty heavy. So the bottom line is that my narcissistic mother had aggressively brainwashed me from childhood through adulthood. And she would say things that were really cruel about my father. She spoke really harshly about men in general. So my mother basically hated men, all men. So she would always say, all men are bad. Your father's an awful person. Your father doesn't love you. Your father doesn't care for you. Your father doesn't want to see you. Get over it. Get over him. Forget him. And so when you hear this as a child and then a teen, and then you grow up and you're an adult woman, and 24/7, the narc is brainwashing you about your birth father. What happens is that you believe it. So when you grow up as a child, you trust your parent. Most people do trust their parent, especially if it's a sole caregiver. So my mom was my primary caregiver. I believed her. I didn't know as a child that my mother was toxic, abusive, and a narcissist. And so I trusted that whatever she said, I thought it was very accurate. And I didn't know until I grew up and walked away from my very broken, codependent, toxic relationship with my mother in 2018. It wasn't till I started having distance with the narcissist that I was able to grab each piece of the puzzle, put the pieces together, and really have clarity and gain wisdom about this situation that happened in my life. And it's really sad. So the child is put in the middle of the parent. So it's a narcissistic parent with the targeted parent, and you as the child, you are forced to choose which parent you want to side with. And it causes the child anxiety, discomfort. If you're brainwashed, you might not know what's reality versus what's accurate. It could feel just painful and confusing, very, very, very confusing for a child. And the most important thing I need to say on this note is that no child should have to choose between which parent they trust and which parent they don't trust, which parent to stay loyal to and which parent to reject. And I didn't have that opportunity. So I feel like my mother hijacked my life as a child without me even fully being aware of it. And my mother brainwashed me to believe that my father didn't care. My mother alienated me for my entire life from my dad. And it took me over 54 years to really come to grips with this and to understand it. So let's move on now into how the narcissist tries to alienate the child and or adult with the other parent. Now, typically this does happen when you're young, and then you might become a teenager, and then you might become a grown adult. But we have to remember now, when we're talking about a narcissistic parent, we're really referring to the childhood timeline, and then from there, it may evolve into your adulthood. So when I share the 16 signs of parental alienation, take it with a grain of salt that this could be based on your childhood, your teenage years, but it also might blend into and kind of bleed over into your grown adulthood. Okay, so number one, how does the parent alienate the child from the other parent? They move far, far away to create long distance between the child and the other parent. Number two, the narc parent will gossip about the other parent and or this new spouse. So for example, my dad left my mother. Within 1 month of their divorce, he remarried, and my mother hated this other woman. So she gossiped about her. She spread rumors about her. She said really cruel statements about my stepmother. Number three, the narcissist will influence the child to disrespect the other parent. And boy, oh boy, my mom dragged his name through the mud. I won't even repeat some things that she said about him. It's pretty despicable and appalling, and I feel so sorry for my father. Number four, the narcissistic parent is hostile, spiteful, and bitter towards the targeted parent. Number five, they will shift blame the other parent, claiming false accusations. So there's a lot of pathological lying, deception. Oh, dear Lord, the things that they create. Oh, the false accusations are just mind-blowing. Mind-blowing, the things they'll tell you about the other parent that are not true. Next would be number six. So the narcissist will limit your contact with the targeted parent. So they're going to try to have control over when you see the parent, when you talk to the parent, when you have visitation with this other parent, and on that goes. Number seven is The narcissist makes false allegations of abuse by the other parent. So they may make up some really serious allegations stating that your other parent abused you, when in reality, they did not. Next, number 8, the narcissist will brainwash you, whether you're a child, teen, or adult, to believe the lies they say about the targeted parent. Again, it's delusional, it's crazy making, it's just absolute horrifying, some of the things they could accuse your other parent of saying or doing. Again, once you are grown up, you might gain more wisdom and facts and find out that your narc parent lied through their teeth, and you might gain some insight into some clarity and facts. Next, number 9. Oh, this one's a big one. My mom did this all the time. So the narcissist parent will accuse the other parent, which was my father, of not caring for you, of not loving you. They're going to say, oh, they don't want to see you. Oh, they started a new family. Oh, they're happy without you. And they'll say a lot of really mean-spirited things. And again, if you're a child, you don't know any better. So typically most children will believe these false statements, which is extremely hurtful. Number 10, the narc will belittle and criticize your other parent. Number 11, they're going to tell the child personal information about their marital relationship and or reasons for separation, divorce, or calling it quits. It could be really destructive. I'll give an example. My mother said my father sucked intimately, that he was no good in bed. Number 1, a child doesn't need to hear that. Oh, too much information. Very inappropriate. And no, you really shouldn't talk to your children about having sex with the ex-spouse. Too much information. Not necessary. Okay, next would be number 12. The narc will force the child to choose the one parent over the other. Now, again, very, very cruel. This is abuse, outright abuse, but it happens, so beware. Number 13, the narcissist gets ticked off when the child spends time with the other parent. So I would go on summer vacations. I only got to see my dad maybe 1 week, if I was lucky, 2 weeks out of a year. Oh, good Lord, that's not enough time to really even get to know your parent. But this is the way it was. He lived out of state. He lived very, very far away. And I was only permitted to see him this very, very short amount of time. And when I would come home, I would talk about, Dad took me blueberry picking and I love blueberries and we made blueberry pancakes and we made blueberry waffles and we put blueberries all over our cereal. And I just really loved blueberries, and I have such great memories with my father. And my mother was furious, absolutely outraged that I had beautiful memories that my dad created with me. My dad would take me fishing, we'd go swimming, we'd go horseback riding, he'd take me on motorcycle rides, and we had just a great time. So I really loved visiting my dad, and I'm so thankful that I had that opportunity, even though it was very few and far between. But what happens is the narcissist will be so ticked off at anything positive that you will share about your other parent. Next would be that the narcissist uses the child or the teenager, or even if you're a grown adult, they will use you to spy on and report back to them about what's going on in the other parent's life. They want to know about the targeted parent. Who are they dating, or who are they going out with, or how much money do they earn? What are they doing for a living? What kind of home do they live in? They might ask very personal, confidential questions too. And so they will use you to spy on and report back to them about your other parent. Now keep in mind, if you're a child, you don't know better. So don't blame yourself. Don't feel bad. Don't beat yourself up. You're the innocent child who was abused by the narcissist. Number 15 is that the narcissist will make demands on the other parent that is contrary to the court orders. So it could be things in regards to alimony, child support, medical insurance, so many different things, especially regarding money. And lastly, number 16, the parent will cause the child to become codependent with them, the narcissist. And so most people who have a narcissistic parent, you can understand that, yes, your relationship is not healthy. It is codependent. It's sad, very, very sad, because again, you were brainwashed. You might have a trauma bond with a narcissist, and the whole relationship is hurtful and so traumatic. A survey taken at the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts annual, and this is in 2014, and they had a conference. So this is a conference they had in 2014, and they reported that 98% people are in agreement, quote unquote, they're in agreement to this quote. So the quote says, in support of the basic tenet of parental alienation, children can be manipulated by one parent to reject the other parent who does not deserve to be rejected. So we'll just sum it up. What they're saying is that this Association of Family and Conciliation had this annual conference, and when they did the statistics on parental alienation, 98% of the people agreed that, while they may have been alienated from their other parent, that children should not be manipulated to reject the other parent. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. So on the website, psychology.com, they share, quote unquote, for the child, the biosocial, spiritual effects of parental alienation are devastating. For both the alienated parent and child, the removal and denial of contact and the absence of neglect or abuse constitute cruel and unusual treatment as a form of child maltreatment. Parental alienation is a serious child protection matter as it undermines a basic principle of social justice for children. Amen. They say here, the child has the right to know and be cared for and be in a relationship with the other parent. And I agree with that statement as well. Parental alienation involves the systemic brainwashing, manipulation, pathological lying to children with the sole purpose of destroying a loving, healthy relationship with the other parent. In my case, my birth father. And so the most important fact to learn about parental alienation and triangulation is that it is a form of child abuse. So we have to understand anything to do with a narcissist alienating you from the other parent and having manipulative, covert schemes, gaslighting, causing you to not be in a relationship with the other parent. This is a form of child abuse. In 2017, after reading the book The Father Effect by John Finch, I felt nudged and convicted to visit my father. So I hadn't visited my father back in that timeline for several years. My father and I had a long distance between us. I grew up alienated from him. I really believed my mother. I honestly believed her when she said, he doesn't love you, he doesn't care about you. I believed her. I took it like Bible, like it was like the word. Back in those days, I didn't know what I know today. And so what happened was I started to feel this little prompting within me, something, just in my spirit, tell me you need to go visit your father. And so I did. So it was in December 2017. Back in that timeline, I was still in a relationship with my siblings. And so all of us together went to visit our father. It was right before Christmas. We kind of had like a little Christmas celebration with our father, and we brought him Christmas gifts and so forth, and spent the weekend with him. And it was just the most beautiful time. Even though I had, intrepidation, I wasn't sure of how my father would respond to me. What happened was my dad welcomed me with open arms, open arms. I mean, he hugged me. He kept telling me he loved me. He just would smile at me. He would say, "I'm so happy to see you, Dana." He was so happy to see me. And him and I restored our relationship in December 2017. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing to heal my father wounds. It was this really, really amazing recovery, and just such a wonderful experience to see how I was aligned for such a time to read the book, The Father Effect, to cross paths with John Finch, to become friends with him, to understand, what it is to be alienated from your father, and then to feel this gentle nudge to go visit my dad and make amends with him. And he said to me, "I am sorry." I mean, my father, he openly apologized. He asked me to forgive him, in which I have done so. And then in 2018, I sensed a little nudge again, that due to my dad having very advanced Alzheimer's, very sick, not well, that it was a really important thing for me to go back and visit him by myself. So not with my siblings. I would do it on my timeline in a way that would most have my father and my best interest at heart, in a private manner, to see him. And so I did this. And again, it was such a beautiful experience. My father had moments when he did not even know it was me. When you have Alzheimer's, you forget your loved ones. And without getting into all the dynamics on what Alzheimer's is, most of you already know, there is intense brain fog, memory loss, a cognitive impairment, et cetera, et cetera. But after like 20 minutes of being there with my dad, all of a sudden, it was so crazy, but I ended up giving him a Father's Day gift and a birthday gift, some gifts, because it was the timeline where we were getting ready to celebrate his birthday and Father's Day. So I had this picture of him and I that he hugged me, the picture from 2017 when I visited him and first reconciled my relationship with him. And it was so cool because I put it in a frame and I gave this to my father with other gifts. And for the first 20 minutes of seeing my dad, he didn't even know it was me, but he was like very gracious, very polite. And then all of a sudden, when he opened the gift and he saw this framed picture, his eyes like just lit up and opened wide. And he's like, Dana, it's you. I'm so happy to see you. And he hugged me and he was so happy. And we spent the entire weekend together, and he told me war stories and told me so many things that I didn't even know, like how he wrote poetry when he was a young teenager. It was just the most beautiful, beautiful thing. And so I wanted to just end on this note that, despite my mother who brainwashed me about my father, despite my mother who alienated me from my relationship with my birth father, the end is this. I made amends with my father. We made peace. We restored our relationship. The one thing my toxic siblings and my narcissistic mother can never steal from me, can never take away from me, is my father's unconditional divine love for me. My dad has always loved me. Now this I know to be true. And so as I now am in a different season of life and my parents are both passed away, I am at a better place, or because I have educated myself about triangulation of relationships and, parental alienation and brainwashing and narcissistic abuse, I've come around the bend. and I'm feeling so much better. I have peace within my soul because I know I'm on the right path. And so today, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know if the narcissist triangulated your relationship with other people, or if it was a narcissistic parent. I don't know if they alienated you and distanced you from your other birth parent, or maybe your other relatives and someone else. It could have been a different situation for you. But share with me, has the narcissist triangulated your relationships? Who was it with? As a child or as an adult, did your parent alienate you from your other parent? Whatever happened, did you ever make amends with the other parent? How is your relationship with the narcissist and with your other birth parent? So I'm really curious to know how it's going with you. Feel free to like my video, subscribe to my channel, visit me at danaarcuri.com, and share with me your thoughts on parental alienation and triangulation. Thank you, and have a beautiful day.